Hello everybody, this is Tim here again, here another movie review, this time for Thanksgiving. Now this movie's kind of been out for a little while now. I recently just now got around to seeing it. I just want to go ahead and say in terms of the movie, I liked it. From 1 to 4 stars, I'd give it a solid 3. It was a good slasher flick. The movie does have some problems. It's pretty much a spin-off of Grindhouse, which was made a long while back, where it had them fake trailers, and like one of them was made by Eli Roth, like a Grindhouse version of like a Thanksgiving old horror movie or whatever, which was kind of funny. Now he's finally making a movie about it. Eli Roth's the director. I'm not really a big fan of. To be honest, I haven't really seen a lot of his movies in a long time, like Cabin Fever and Hostel. I remember liking Hostel. I remember being kind of 50-50 on Cabin Fever. His other stuff I don't really care for. Like, I did like A House and a Clock in Its Walls, but that's not really an Eli Roth movie. That's just a movie he was hired to direct. But this movie I enjoyed. It's a good slasher flick. It's not a perfect movie. It's not a great slasher movie. It's not a slasher masterpiece or anything. But it's a good slasher flick. It opens up with like a satire of Black Friday, which was a bit too over the top, but at the same time, it was pretty funny in how it did, with everybody breaking in to get a waffle iron and everything, and like trampling over people and causing mass death and everything. And Gina Gershon was one of the chicks that got killed. Pretty funny, pretty entertaining. You got Patrick Dempsey here as one of the cops. He was also in Scream 3 and a couple of 80s flicks, and I know he's famous for being on some like really crappy hospital drama soap opera or something. But he's good here. Spoiler alert, he turns out to be the killer. You find out later that Gina Gershon, or whatever, who got trampled, was actually going to leave her husband, and she was basically having an affair with Patrick Dempsey, and she was pregnant with his kid. Um, and The teenagers who like go in at the beginning, like pretty much the killers, like targeting specific people who were there on Black Friday night, who instigated the incident and caused and that he blames for causing the death of his, was going to be his woman with his, also was pregnant with his unborn child. And so he's taking them out one by one. The gore in the movie is good. It is over the top comical most of the time, like really silly. Eli Roth's making this movie in a certain way to where he wants it to be like a throwback. He's not making it like a Grindhouse film, because it doesn't have the like Grindhouse gritty look that those other movies had that were trying to go for that Grindhouse flavor. This just looks like a contemporary slasher movie. That's with a slight. It's still a modest budget movie, but still looks like a contemporary movie, is what I'm saying, because it's still got that slightly more modern look to it, aesthetic, like glossier look that old films didn't have. But at the same time, it's like Eli Roth trying to fill this film with over the top gore, like just used for pure comedy type gore. So he wants it to kind of be like a horror comedy, but at the same time, the film is not quite zany enough. Like, he wants it to be like, at times it feels like he wants it to be a horror comedy, but the film's not really silly enough for the whole Thanksgiving gimmick to be like a straight up horror comedy, because the killer wears like this John Carver evil pilgrim mask and everything with an axe. It's kind of a neat outfit, but it looks like something that'd be more appropriate for just a standard B movie slasher. But the movie tries to play itself as like an over the top horror comedy, so it would be more, it would work, it would mesh better with the over the top horror comedy vibe of the film's going for, with the over the top gore. If the killer was in like a more ridiculous outfit, like a killer turkey or something, that would work better. That would fit more of the silly factor that this movie's going with, is trying to be a horror comedy. Um, but um, but also at the same time, it's almost like Eli Roth also wants this to be a throwback to like B movie slashers from the 80s, because it has lots of homages to like Halloween and Friday the 13th even, and My Bloody Valentine. Like, the main girl in this is like in a love triangle with these two guys, her old boyfriend, who like ran off because he accidentally got his hand broken on the Black Friday, the day or whatever incident. And then her new boyfriend, who's like this new guy who like had a crush on her or whatever. And they just kind of throw that in. Eli Roth does, because it was something that was in the original My Bloody Valentine from the 80s, but they don't really do anything with it. It's just kind of there. And that, like I said, like the other things that make this feel like a B movie throwback to like the B movie slashers from the 80s, is like you got shots that are taken directly from Halloween, like where the main chick is like looking outside and she sees the killer standing out there, and then she looks back and he's like disappeared, just like Halloween. It almost feels like the exact same shot. But yeah, overall, but the difference is with like trying to be a throwback to those types of films, and how it doesn't exactly 100% mesh here, is because in those types of films they have that low budget 80s look and vibe to them, whereas this film still looks modern, so it doesn't have that flavor, so it feels a bit tonally off when you watch it. But at the same time, the gore is fun and the kills are fun. You got some good gore with the kills, like this chick gets thrown on a saw blade and her guts come out. That's pretty damn funny. And of course, this other chick who gets like turned into turned into a turkey, which was pretty funny. And a pretty fun little cat and mouse suspense scene where he's like chasing after her through the house and everything. And she almost gets away and he like picks up the hay fork and like throws it and gets her in the back and it turns her into a turkey and like actually cuts a piece of her off and is like going to feed it to her husband, who her husband was like the dude who owned the place that was open on Black Friday or whatever. So it's pretty funny. The one thing I will say is that there are some obvious problems here. The movie, it is pretty obvious who the killer is once you get closer towards the end of the movie. It's pretty obvious it's going to be Patrick Dempsey because he's still a pretty big name actor and he's always just kind of in the background in the movie and you just play him as the perpetual nice guy. And all the other characters, they give like hints to like they may be the killer because of this and that, but they never give anything for Patrick Dempsey. So until like the end of the movie when he explains himself, so it's like it's kind of obvious it's going to be him because he's the one that's like the least in the spotlight. Other problems is like this is still kind of like a token slasher movie, and at this point we've seen so many slasher movies and there's nothing here, sorry about that, my camera's moving around a little, there's nothing here that really makes these characters stand out in terms of the victims or anything, and some of them are just assholes, and most of the asshole characters just kind of get killed, and even the main girl who does the overall good job is just kind of the token good girl. There's not a lot, like big lot to her or anything. And Patrick Dempsey does a good job as the killer when he's like at the end of it chasing after him without the mask and everything, chasing after the main girl. He's pretty funny. He's he's playing it over the top, and it is funny. You can tell the actor's having fun. He gets like blowed up at the end of it, and then the cops are like, "We didn't find a body anywhere." And then it hints at there might be a sequel at the end because the girl like has a nightmare where she's like sleeping with her new boyfriend, and she has a nightmare that Patrick Dempsey shows up on fire with his part of his face melted, and he's trying to grab her like, ah. And so it hints that there's going to be that there could be a sequel if this does well, and apparently it did well, and they're going to be a sequel. So this is going to be a franchise. So yeah, overall, I'd give it a 3 out of 4. It was a good, entertaining slasher flick. I had fun with it. I miss movies like this. It's been a long time since we've had like a B-movie slasher flick like this, and that's pretty much what this flick ends up being. In one hand, it has some tonal problems, like I said, because it tries to like be a tribute to those B-movie exploitation type slashers of the 80s, but it doesn't have that kind of gritty, low-budget look of those films. It feels a bit too glossy still. And also, on the other hand, some of the horror comedy that it does try to do isn't. It would have been better if it was more ridiculous with the killer's gimmick and everything. Instead, it feels like it's trying. By the end of the movie, it feels like it's trying to be just kind of a standard slasher movie that is a throwback, like I said, to those 80s flicks, which half works, but maybe 20% doesn't because it doesn't have that low budget feel of those 80s flicks. But yeah, overall, this was a fun slasher film. A solid 3 out of 4. I liked it. I would pick it up on DVD for probably $10. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again.